basically have the supervisor for the shift build a log. It's basically a running timetable of all the events for that shift. And every morning I would go and compile that log, and it actually went all the way to our colonel, who wanted to actually review that each morning. So he takes a very interest in the loads. Right now, ISP is involved with several oversized, over-legal loads throughout the state of Idaho. Those follow the news. There's several down in District 6, which is the Idaho Falls area right now, waiting to move over with a different shipper, and we are also in contract with them providing public safety. So we have a lot of vested interest in this right now. And again, we're out there basically for public safety purposes and ensure that the loads move through safely without any incidents. And if there is an incident, we're right there to take care of it.
Thank you very much. We have Dave Reynolds here from our fire department too. And Dave, I'd like you to comment on this as well.
We haven't identified any specific fire or emergency medical services issues. We'll have crews on standby, as we always do. Unless something happens specific for injuries or fires, it's not really an event for our department.
Tom is here.
I just was following up on the question. Oh, I'm sorry.
What
This
question?
Tom. You're asking.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I want to
go
talk
ahead.
about the forestry, about the trees here, Tom. And then I'll go over to Tom. We got two Toms.
Oh, sure. I just realized what you're doing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
I'd like to talk about our trees here, tree line.
As we experienced with the previous over-legal load shipments, working with the contractor then, the city had a very minimal impact to our community forest. We worked very closely with the project manager at that time, and myself as a certified arborist and two others from the city visited the route twice ahead of time and looked for any glaring obstructions, of which there were none. And the contractor hired a tree trimming company at that time who, previous to the shipments, came through town, much well-publicized event. We made some minor cuts on branches up to 1.25 inches in diameter, mostly with under 5 feet in length. And at the end of the day, after we all walked the route, agreed to each and every cut, we had about one trash basket full of wood chips left over. So the impact from the previous was minimal. I believe we trimmed to 17 feet on certain trees. And with that work already having been done, I don't see any problem at this point in time, but would encourage a pre-run visit.
Okay, I'll ask our other Tom. Actually, we had three Toms, don't we?
Yeah, there's another
One
one.
of our county commissioners.
I just had a question to follow up for the officer from ISP. It sounds like there's an incident compilation that you are referring to. Is that a?
It's basically a log.
Oh, there is a log.
It's a log of the events.
Okay.
99% of them are uneventful.
Okay.
Basically, we run through our dispatch, which is out of Coeur d'Alene, and we just kind of document where the load is at any given time. So about every 15 minutes, we update our dispatch. It's logged into our what we call a CAD system, it's computer dispatch center. It permanently records where that load is at, so it gives dispatch an idea where that load is anytime. So if there is an emergency, we're aware of an ambulance that needs to run, it's going to come through. Our dispatch knows exactly where the load's at the time. They coordinate with the EMS and us, and we immediately get a hold of the shipper, and we find the first place to get off the road to allow access for emergency vehicles and medical emergency. And that's kind of another reason that we like to be with the loads, that if we do have to get them off the road for any reason, we're right there. We have the communication to do it. We have full EMS communication, and we can facilitate that movement and give the emergency vehicles priority. But as far as the log goes, it's just basically a written document of the events of the load, the time frame and whatnot, and if there is any specific incidents, DUI arrest, a crash, somebody goes to the borrow bid, things such of that nature.
Hey, John, did you have a question?
Yeah, we've been discussing this for about an hour now, and I was just kind of wondering, you said that the maximum speed is going to be 25 miles an hour at any point. So cut that in half, 12.5 miles an hour. How long do you figure it's going to take this load to go from city limit south to city limit north and the problem then is no longer a problem that might occur in Moscow, but might occur somewhere else?
Well, depending on traffic in town, as far as our hazards, could be protests or however, if it was a free, clear roadway, probably wouldn't be here for more than half an hour.
So that's what we can hope for.
Last,
Just a quick question for the gentleman from that website. I believe that this unit has the ability to adjust vertically.
Yes, we can go, from where our position is now, we can go down to where the vessel is just a pocket line at 15.7, and we can go up almost 5.5 feet. Yes.
Wayne?
Well, while you're talking about your vehicles and the capabilities of it, it gets a little bit hard to wrap ourselves around the length and size of this particular transport. And those of us that are golfers, I can look at it, it's a 150-yard shot with a 7-iron to get from one end to the other. That's quite a ways. So my question is, and I know you've looked at it, as Washington goes along and then it comes back around toward the left turn, tell me how you're going to get through that without driving up on the curb with the sidewalks.
Again, both ends of the transporter steers, we can grab it left or right, which means we can turn all of the tires one direction and bring it this way or bring it this way, or we can counter steer it and bring it this way or this way. I'm very confident in that corner. There's tighter corners than that. So I'm very confident in that corner that our transport tires will not be on this. And by the rules, by the TE, we can't be on curves.
And then a question and more of a comment, Mr. Mayor, if I may. If everybody is aware, these loads are getting bigger, bigger, bigger. Doral, when does it finally get to the point where these loads just don't make sense anymore? How much bigger can they get? I mean, I would have never imagined in my mind that we would have a city block of 1.6 million pound vehicle coming up through our town. This to me doesn't make sense. When does it really not make sense? Can you answer that?
It's really out of my realm, Wayne. I know that they have a million and a half money fairly regular down in southeast Idaho, around the mines and that. There's a little bit of activity down by Boise, west of Boise, that they run them. I never expected to see something quite this large myself. But what our requirement, the limit will be when they can't meet our requirements any longer. The weight that we mentioned earlier, as well as the times, the 15-minute delay time that the oncoming motor receives. And then when they can't do that, then that's when it stops us, and then it stops. We'll have to change their operation to cut this thing in half or something in order to get it there.
Well, and then I guess you could probably answer that question, looking at the limitations that we have with the corners, and we'll talk about this one I just mentioned. How much bigger can you get and still do it?
Not much bigger.
Much bigger?
Not much more we can get.
Following up on Wayne's question, the 1.6 million is bumper to bumper weight.
Correct.
What is the weight of the vessel you're carrying?
The
load?
Yeah, the vessel itself that we've got on is not the heaviest one. The 1.6 is the heaviest one. And that weighs about...
Do you know the size of the vessel on the heaviest?
It's 600,000.
So more than double your load weight
This is true.
is what it's taking to move this without putting too much weight on the highway.
Well, this weight includes the tractors too, right?
Yes, everything.
1.6 is bumper to bumper of everything,
Everything.
but the load itself is only in this under 700,000.
That's what it takes to minimize the weight per
per inch per tire width length.
Correct. Per linear.
I wanted, Bill, Bill and Bandy here, of course, being engineer, and I'm gonna have you guys consider it, yeah, so I'm very interested in his take here. Thoughts?
Enforcement has been contracted by Megaload to take care of the public involvement, any of the environmental work that needs to be done. We've also provided some engineering support to the company as well. A lot of what's been discussed today, our engineers in my firm have taken a look at these issues as well, looking at essentially the trapezoid formation that transfers the pressure from the tires down to the subsurface substrate. We do have a PowerPoint presentation that addresses some of the questions that have been asked, but just to kind of get at a few of them, one of the issues was the utilities in the end of the streets. And the calculations that our road folks, our road engineers have made is that 4 feet down to the surface, the increase in pressure is about 8.9 pounds per square inch. A typical typical truck will exert like 6.9, and the total maximum design load actually is a little over 10 psi. So although, as we've talked about, this is a heavy load, it's a dual lane system, it's spread across the 2 lanes, the actual pressure that's being exerted 4 feet down below the surface by those individual tires is relatively minimal, 8.9 psi. Pressures in the, unless you could probably be more accurate than that, the pressures within mains are what, maybe 100 psi?
Within a water main,
Water
downtown
mains,
core, yeah, about 90.
So, and as Doral had mentioned as well, I mean, you take up a lot of that pressure by the subgrade of the road, plus the strength of the piping, whatever it is, sewage or drinking water, whatever it may be. So even though there is some additional pressure, the infrastructure really doesn't see much of a change. So as this road moves through town, as we discussed earlier, it's like 16 chip trucks going along in transit. And as Les said too, that the pipes, substrate, it doesn't see it as all of those trucks going at once. It just sees that one piece, that transient load at one point in time. So whether they do it all at once, or they do it over the course of 3 or 4 weeks, that many trucks, it has the same impact.
Yeah, I have a question for Chip. On your tires, from your outer tire to the outer road, what is the overhang distance? Like if we did have a tire coming up against the curb, how much more would be over?
2.5 feet is the beam, and our beam is at 5 feet near. So the bottom of the feet is, or the bottom of the beam is 5 feet, and a foot and a half, or 2.5 foot out on each side. The maximum width of this trailer is 25 foot and about 1.5 inches on each side. And that, we're 20-foot wide transporter, 25-foot beams.
I guess, just for the permits, when you issue the permit and the press releases, about what time would be the time you would get the information out to the public that this load would be built?
Well, I'll hand it on to Adam, real quick, but let me let you know, first, I don't issue the permit, our boys, the obligation is to submit, I want to make sure that's clear. But what I have done in the past, because we're kind of the logistics out of the district, is try to give, working with the hauler, whether it's Megaload or Omega Morgan, some other one, to get a sense of when they think they're gonna move. Sometimes they gotta gear up, we're all looking at the weather forecast, and then we like to give a heads up, and say we're gonna, well, I might call, you, Dave, or Glass, and let them know, we're thinking about moving on Friday, or we're gonna be moving 4 or 5 days out, and then we'll let you know based on the weather forecast. Everybody can watch the weather forecast and say, make a pretty good call on it. That's kind of what I try to do, is let local officials know that we think we're gonna be moving out. But in terms of our press release, Adam?
Hey, David, we work hard to issue a press release 24 hours in advance of a shipment moving. We anticipate that the permit's going to be issued on Friday, and the shipment is gonna start moving that night, we'll often send out a press release the day before on a Thursday saying we haven't issued a permit yet, but we anticipate doing so. That press release would include the route, the hours of travel, flight staff, company shipment, and the fact that the permit's valid for 5 days. Excuse me.
That brought up one other question. There was a question on here. We have asked Megaload and the company not to move through Moscow on Friday nights and Saturday nights and Sunday mornings. It looks like they're going to honor that request based on our community events. Are the permits going to be issued as the previous ones started at 10 to 5, or can you move that up maybe to 9?
We can work with that. The reason why we chose 10 was because we looked at our hourly traffic counts, and the traffic basically drops off right around 10. It's quite dramatic, actually. And then it doesn't really start picking up again until 7, maybe 8 o'clock, depending on where you are and on what route you're on. But we can certainly work with you on that.
My main concern is to have the loads through here before power break.
Oh.
What had previously worked for us was that most of the loads transition between mostly 11 and midnight.
Yeah.
These loads are not going to be able to move as fast, and we understand they have different stopping and waiting points now. From where they're planning on moving south to here, it doesn't look like they'll be here till 1 in the morning, and that's much of a window that I'm not comfortable with. I'd like to have my prior to 1 o'clock.
We can certainly work with that way. You know, I have the draft transportation plan that they've submitted, and we haven't approached it yet to one of them until we get imminent with the permit. That doesn't look like it's got bridge analysis, so I can certainly consider that.
I'll just consider that usually it's starting at 1 till about 3. We have intoxicated individuals that are not in motor vehicles, they are walking or on bicycles. So we would like.
So between 1 and 3, you would not like them coming through town?
Prefer them to come through town.
Okay.
Yeah, you had mentioned that once a permit is issued, then it's usually between 1 and 5, that permit's good for 1 to 5 days. You know what I heard? So
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, it's valid for a 5-day period. It's routine for our permits office in Boise to extend that 5-day valid date because of, this time of year especially, it's weather conditions. We have some shipments that are moving across southern Idaho using sections of Interstate 84, sections of US 20 and US 93, and they've taken longer than anticipated because of weather conditions. In a case like that, we can extend it.
well, and that was kind of my follow-up is at this time of year, it's been very mild weather up here, weather to go up and change quickly. Winter time, as we all know, every sort of on the cruise can change in 1 day.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you said that. Tom, you have a question?
I'm interested in trying to understand why this particular route gets chosen. It seems like Highway 95 wouldn't necessarily be the best route for trying to get through.
As Lewiston, the Port of Lewiston is the farthest inland port on the west coast. It cuts out hundreds of miles of over transportation. And it's a viable port that should be used.
So it's in the larger transportation scheme, getting it that far reduces the number of miles that you're trying to.
Correct. There's lots of impact on the roads, getting it in that far. And ultimately, if we had to experience overland, we would still be able to be on the same route. We would just be impacting traffic even more on other routes.
And these are shipments arriving across the ocean?
No, this one was actually at the Port of Stockton. It had been bringing for, just to give you a little background on this piece, it's a hydrocracker unit, and it's made for making ultra-low sulfur diesel. It's an upgrade to the unit plant for
per their EPA standards. This one actually was built for the Flying J refinery in Bakersfield, that's now defunct. And they had repurposed it at the port of Stockton. It had sat there for like 8 years. This refinery bought it and repurposed it for a hydrocracker unit. And that's how it ended up moving from the port of Stockton up to Lewiston and into their refinery.
Great.
Yeah, Great Falls, sorry. Bolton? Yeah.
A question for our city department heads around this table. This load is bigger than previous load, I understand. But is there any documented damage in the city of Moscow from previous quote-unquote megaloads? Start with Tom down to Pauline.
No.
Not the public works.
Also go on record, there's only 3, right?
There is
Just
only 3. It's one hydrocracker unit cut in 3 pieces to minimize the size.
And there'll be at least 2 weeks between each load.
Yeah, there'll be at least 2 weeks in between each load. We're using the same transporter 3 times. So it's the exact same thing that you see the first time, you'll see the second time.
You break it down, you take it back south.
We take the beams out and we transport the transporters over the road, but we're gonna go around to the city. And we'll bring them back down and we'll reassemble it at the port around the transport.
Have you had anybody that hasn't been able to speak at the table here? Young lady on the other side, and then we haven't spoke.
We're just contracted by Megaload to provide the traffic control.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to say? No, okay. Other questions?
Just have one comment, Mr. Mayor, on the part of notification along with ITD's press release. But the moves down south, we update the location of the load after each time it moves on a Twitter account. ISP has a Twitter account, and Teresa Baker, who is our public information officer, updates the status of the loads. At least they have been in southern Idaho, and I'm going to try to get her to do the same for these loads, so that after the load moves on our Twitter account, people can go onto our Twitter account and find out where the load stopped for the night. And that way they'll have an idea of where it's at and they can plan their travel